Hey everyone, it's Desiree here with another art journal. I'm really starting to get into these, but this time I'm going to work on a piece of canvas, but maybe not the type of canvas you're used to seeing where it's stretched over wooden bars. This is kind of a little bit flatter, and we are going to use stuff that's in our stash. We are paper crafters. We've got it all. So Arteza had sent these to me. These are just 5x7 canvases. They are just under 1/4 of an inch thick. I just thought it was the perfect size. I have a lot of easels, and they also have those too. But, you know, this way it's not sitting in a book. It would be a beautiful gift for someone. So I just wanted to have some fun. So I real quick grabbed out my white gesso, and I just wanted to put a nice thin coat on there. Sometimes they are primed, sometimes they are not. But even still, I just like to add just a little bit. I pulled out my Blick Studio acrylic paints. These are the paints that I usually use for my art journals. One, because I have tons of them. And two, they come in great colors. Yes. But any acrylic paint will work. Anything you've got, whether it's from your local craft store, these, or maybe you have, you know, some others that you've collected. I used one of my dies from Tim Holtz to cut into some paper that I just have sitting in my stash. And I wanted to cut that image out from there, and then I'm just tearing the paper. I'm not using my scissors yet. Just creating some shapes so that it'll continue onto the piece. I do want this to have a background, so again, I literally I have this huge bin just of paper scraps that I just keep. I don't have the heart to get rid of them, so I actually had a ball just digging into that to see what I could come up with. Now, you all knew the vintage photo had to make a comeback into this. But just know that when you're doing this, you are going to activate the distress ink. Okay, it's reactive with water. The gesso is going to make these colors move, and you'll see this. And honestly, I'm okay with it. I knew that was going to happen. So you can see how it's coming down on the bottom there. The water in the gesso, or the wetness of the gesso, is going to move that ink throughout the piece. All right, but that's just adding more color to my background. Now, if I would have used an archival ink, it wouldn't have done that. So you have the two differences between an archival or your distress. Distress will move, archivals will not. I do have my craft mat underneath me, and I have a teal, a brown, and a maroon sitting there. Now, because I've already used my gesso, there is a tint of white to my water, so that's why I'm getting a lighter shade. And again, I'm okay with that too. I am so letting that go. And I'm just putting colors down. I just want to splash them through, just get some of that color, whether it's on the paper, just in certain areas. And you can see as I'm now blending this straight up and down, they're going to start mixing. Now, of course, these colors aren't going to mix very well together, except the red and the blue. I'll get a shade of a purple. Of course, with the brown, I might get a little bit more muddiness, because the colors really don't mix. But again, I'm okay with that. I'm coming back in with my gesso, and I just want to streak it. I just want to streak it up this panel. I want to fill in some of those crevices from the die cut. And you can see that die cut is really getting more dimension to it, because the colors are seeping into the corners and making it more prominent. Than having it just in there, creating that image, so to speak. I am using my Ranger heat tool because I'm extremely impatient, and once I get going, I need to keep going. So I'm grabbing my potting soil, excuse me, acrylic ink, and one of my stamps from the Stampers Anonymous, etc. stamp set, and I'm just going all over with that first generation, second generation, but I'm just kind of covering it with the stamped image. I'm coming in with my DreamWorks embossing tape, and this is gold. Now, it doesn't look it right now. It kind of looks very matted. It kind of looks very bleh, to be very honest. It doesn't look shiny or shimmery. But what I will say is when this dries, it is a beautiful gold color. They do have silver as well. But I really do like the color. Now, this is not something that I do like to use my heat tool for. I'm just thinking that it might bubble. So I will let this dry naturally. It doesn't take too long depending upon how thick you put it on your project. And then I just filled in on some of the corners just to make it messy. And that is how it looks when it dries. So it really does turn into a beautiful gold. I'm going to add some white splatters coming across. And for that, I will use my gesso. Now, since I'm using an acrylic paint, these will stay white. If I've used an oxide or a distress ink, something that's water reactive, it will pick up that color and lose the brightness of the white. I'm using I'm using a die from my stash, and it is by Lawn Fawn. And I'm looking up the name of it here. It's not a new, it's called Pretty Poppies, and I thought these were perfect. So I just cut a bunch of them out. I grabbed the same stamp that I used on my background, and I stamped over these images just to give them some texture. And now I'm going around the outside with my archival ink, and I used the same ink for when I stamped. So these are, I used a very lightweight cardstock that I have in my stash, and these are all scraps, and I'm just going to town with the archival ink just to give them shading, some depth, and then again that texture. I'm now working on the centers, and you'll see as I go through I do add more die cuts because I forgot a layer. Yeah, that's what I did, but that's okay. So once I have the centers down, I'm going to now do the leaves. So there's 3 different sizes of leaves, and I'm really going to cover them. I want to saturate them with this archival ink. I love the color that I used for them. It's like a teal green, and it does match the background with the shade of teal that I used, but I didn't want that complete brightness to come off of the journal page, so, or canvas page, whatever we want to call it. So again, I'm using what's in my stash. I'm using as much as I can from my scrap bin just to go through that paper. And it's funny, as I was digging in there, I found all kinds of papers that I fell in love with again. So that's dangerous in itself. But again, you don't need to have anything fancy, you know, just your inks, maybe some stamps that'll give you some texture. They don't have to be words. It could have been an image that we could have used. So I'm using my Spellbinders tool-in-one, and they actually have different attachments for the tool now, which is really cool. And I'm using the stylus end, and now I'm just breaking the fibers so that they curled on themselves. So the one way so that they would pop up, and then I turned it over and then pressed in the center so that I would get that curve going down. I'm using my glue dots to layer all of my pieces together, and then once they're layered we will then add in our centers. So I'm going to work on the second large one. And again, I think the glue dots are the best thing. A glue gun is great too. It's a stronger bond. I could use my liquid glue, but I just know the glue dots are going to hold, and they were right there. So now I'm going to work on the centers. I just want those spirals to close up around each other, because I will double those up as well. So I'm going to put the bases down first in the center of each of my poppies, and then I'm going to double up on the spirals with each other, just to make them full. And you can bend them in, whatever you would like to see. And I am going to stagger them so that I have a fuller circle or spiral look to it. I am going to come in with the smaller of the styluses, just so that I can get a tighter spin to it, a tighter fold. And I can also use, you can use your fingers just to close those up as well. So you don't have to use a stylus. You can even use a pen that has a rounded edge, nothing that it would get caught on. So anything that you have. So I did just cut another small one. I realized I was short one, and now I'm just going to play with the placement of my flowers to see how they will look. And because we don't have enough dimension with the flowers, I'm going to prop them up using a foam square. I love dimension. I love the height, and this is perfect because this can sit up on the wall, up on a shelf, in an easel, because I know where this is going. Yes. So now I'm going to come in with all the leaves. This is where I am going to use my liquid adhesive, because I just wanted time to arrange them, play around with them. But this glue, I am using my art glitter glue. It does grab really quick. So there's not too much time for wiggle room, but at least it gives me some, so that I have time to get them in there and press them down onto the canvas. I really did like this size. Now they do have smaller sizes. I was being nosy on the website after they had sent me these. So they do have all kinds of sizes up to really large, if you wanted that. I just like the fact that it's a thinner canvas. It's not that thick, because when I saw it, I'm like, okay, these have the wooden boards where it's stretched across, and they're not. They are sit nicely in your hand. You can really manipulate them very well. So if you didn't want to get into a book and you just wanted to do one every so often, this might be an option for you. But I really did have a good time with this. Now that all of my leaves are set, I went around with the archival ink to the edges, and I simply added a chipboard that says "Be True," and went around that with my archival ink as well. And we should be true. So I do hope you enjoyed this. I hope I inspired you to create something. Dig into your stash. That's what's most important. It just don't have to create cards. We can create anything with what we accumulate over the time that we are in this wonderful craft of ours. All the products that I used will be listed down below in the video description. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those down below as well, and I'll make sure I get back to you as soon as I can. I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending just a little bit of time with me watching my video. If you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe. Make sure you ring the bell so you don't miss the next video. And if you think of it, hit that thumbs up if you did like the video. I hope everyone's having a great day. Remember, take care, but always remember what's most important for me. Always be creative.